Hello, welcome back to the Refuge. My name is Air if you haven't been here before, and today we're going to be talking about the fourth volume of the Husky and his White Cat Shizun. Now it's been a while, at least for me. I haven't finished one of these in a hot second, but I'm glad to greet y'all again with another short little review-ish thing here. I will say, in comparison to the last ones, this one is a little bit more, it's a lot more humorous, a little bit lighter on the subject matter. The last three were kind of depressing, so this is kind of a nice little change in pace. The fourth one, the reason why I have so many tabs here is because this is going to be a little bit different today. I hope you noticed the title of this video. I'm not saying that the book as it is written is an embarrassment. What I meant to say is, as you read this, especially in my case, I have felt a lot of moments of secondhand embarrassment, of which I have gracefully tagged here on the sides in a very lovely manner. So today, for my review, I'm going to be going over every single one of these moments. I kind of filtered them out a little bit so that it was one per chapter, so I didn't try to pick out every single moment ever. I would be here for forever. This book is a little bit different than the others in the sense that we've finally sort of reached that stretch of romantic territory, except literally everything that happens in here is probably more considered awkward and cringy than romantic. These two fumble around each other like none other. But I thought this would be a fun idea because I personally don't get embarrassed myself that often. I kind of live under the standard of it's easier to just not be embarrassed, but if anything, that has heightened my sense of secondhand embarrassment. Anyway, let's get right on to it. First one is actually in, I believe it's the second chapter of this book, chapter 121. Shizun is the real Zongxi. This is when Qiwanning still hasn't woken up yet, but Mo Ren is kind of wandering around at this time, and he ends up being called out in a crowd, but not by his usual name. He gets called out by Qiwanning's name. He was mistaken for him because he has projected how much he has missed him onto even his own clothing, so people think that he is Qiwanning. I have a lot of personal experiences feeling stuff like that. Specifically the part where Morin just kind of looks over, he's like, oh my gosh, has he come back? When everyone knows he's literally not even really seclusion for a year. So that was kind of just slightly amusing to me, having felt something similar. I have a pretty common first name, so I've tended to save myself from situations such as these. I have trained myself to no longer respond to when my first name is being called in a crowd, because I've had too many embarrassing moments when somebody has called out a name and I've looked around and people have looked at me. So no, I feel that. Alright, number 2. So the second moment that I archived in here is a little bit farther into the book. So this is after he has woken up. This is found in chapter 125. Shizun doesn't need to find a cultivation partner. Qiwanning had fallen asleep, and he woke up, but it was the next day, after in the afternoon. He didn't mean to sleep through the whole day, and so he's woken up by the sect leader who was walking in. Qiwanning is 100% unprepared for a visitor to come in at all. His hair is messy. He has this whole section where he talks about how just unsightly he is and not ready for whatever the sect leader is coming in to talk to him about. This is actually one of my worst fears ever, is being walked in right as I'm sleeping. I feel him. I feel his panic. I get it. Number 3 is actually a little bit more tame and is not directed at Qiwanning or Moren's embarrassment. This one's actually more focused on Shui Meng. I actually quite like this chapter. This chapter was cute. This is found in chapter 126. She's only one more chapter for me. So at the very end of this chapter, Qiwanning had gotten ready and gone back to this welcome back banquet after he had woken up. And at the banquet, two of his disciples are there. Modron isn't there at the time. He was late. Shui Meng takes the opportunity to give his master some gifts. One of those gifts is like, they're like 4 figures of Chuaning and his disciples, and he had enchanted them so that they like speak things that are similar to what they would actually say. This one's funny to me, and I like this one a lot. Giving handmade gifts specifically, and not even just handmade gifts, but handmade gifts that are like imitating other people. Then seeing their live reactions to, it's better just to give them something, and then like walk away. Number 4 is in the following chapter, 127, which is Shizun, careful, the ground is slippery. Honestly, this and the next chapter is just a whole lot of embarrassment. This one directly follows the end of that banquet. So Chuaning had been disappointed because Moran didn't show up, so he ended up going to the bathhouse, and at the time it was so late at night, so we didn't think anyone was going to be in there. But lo and behold, there was somebody else taking a bath. He doesn't know who it is at this time, but he keeps walking in, and he sees the guy, and he's basically just so stunned by how handsome this man is that he slips in the water, like, into this guy. So yeah, no, I get it. I would probably have had the exact same reaction, but I also would have probably choked and died if that, because that man ends up being obviously the mystery man in the bathhouse ends up being Moran. Because who else would it Chuaning thirst for? Chuaning is already so embarrassed, and Moran is having basically a heart attack at seeing his true love back in the flesh for the first time in 5 years. So Chuaning finally gets fed up with everything and decides to leave, so he tries to put on some clothes and it just doesn't work. He's like, dang, these are a little bit too long, I'm trailing a little bit. And Moran kind of bursts his bubble at the end of the chapter and is like, bro, those are my clothes. He offers to like switch clothes with him, like, master, you can take those off and you can wear your own clothes. But Chuaning, in his embarrassment, is just like, whatever, I'll do it. Which I relate to, I would do that. So that's also why it was embarrassing, because I realized I would probably have done the same. Exactly, number 6 is related exactly to the last one. In case you're wondering where the clothes went, they didn't go anywhere. He took them home. Chuaning took Moran's clothes home, and he kept them for another like 3 chapters. So in chapter 131, that's in Shizun does some light reading, he ends up going to dinner, and people start like mentioning toward his clothes. I think it's Moran actually. He starts looking at his clothes like, that's not tied right. And so Chuaning is like, since when have I never like been perfect with my clothes? When he realizes that those weren't his clothes, he went and wore Moran's clothes. And not even in the safety of his own house, he wore them in public, in the dining hall in front of everyone. That's embarrassing. Period. Alright, number 7, chapter 132, this is Shizun and Shimei. This chapter is also the definition of secondhand embarrassment. This one and the next one are kind of weird and awkward. So this whole time, Chuaning and Moran decide to go out and eat dinner together in the village. And when they go out, they end up seeing Shimei. He kind of like walks in and he's like, hi, how are you guys? And Moran, being the nice guy that he is, he's like, you should stay and eat with us. Shimei responds not that favorably. He knows it's kind of like a thing between Moran and Chuaning, so he doesn't really want to do it, but they end up insisting, so he stays. So it's already kind of awkward. He starts noticing things between Moran and Chuaning, like the way Moran tends to Chuaning and places food on the table, like, oh, closer to him, things that Chuan-Ning likes. They're like subtle things that give me embarrassment. Things that I would never think about, but it would embarrass the frick out of me if somebody noticed that I had done something like that. At one point, she may become so flustered that he drops his chopsticks onto the floor, and they end up, conveniently, right next to Modron's leg. So he has to go down and grab his chopsticks, and he ends up touching Modron's leg, and his first reaction is, did he just feel me up? The reactions of all these characters to all these random situations, everybody is just so sexually charged right now. But every interaction has become awkward. Alright, moment 8 is actually a little bit far along, like 10 more pages along the last one. In chapter 134, Shizun sure can eat. This is another one of those ones where if it wasn't mentioned to me, or if I didn't notice the difference, I would be embarrassed. So I appreciate how Modron does not tell Chuan-Ning, or he rightfully would have been embarrassed. This is in the morning. Modron ends up going into Chuan-Ning's little house or whatever, and brings him breakfast. And he brings in a lot of food. So Chuan-Ning just kind of assumes that he's supposed to eat all of it. Like, he doesn't even notice that there are 2 pairs of chopsticks, or that there are 2 things of everything. He just kind of eats everything. And then he scolds him after. He scolds Modron after, saying, "Why'd you bring so much food? Like, why would I have eaten all of that?" And Modron is just sitting there laughing, like, "Bro, I'm not gonna tell you because you're gonna be super embarrassed, but half of that was for me." If that was me, if I was Chuan-Ning, I would have been horribly embarrassed. So, good on you, Modron, winning brownie points there for not telling your significant other, your almost significant other, that he has embarrassed himself once again. Number 9, coming a little bit farther after that, chapter 135, Shizun studies on the sly. Oh gosh. This is just something that embarrasses me personally. I guess all of these are. You're gonna learn a lot about me today. At this point in the story, Modron and Chuan-Ning were sent to do some kind of assignment for the sect. And the sect leader didn't want to give them anything super strenuous because he knew Chuan-Ning just got out of seclusion. So he didn't want to give him anything super tough. So he ends up sending both of them to help this small village harvest wheat. Chuan-Ning doesn't know how to do any of it. Instead of kind of getting advice, at first at least, he just decides to do nothing. And everyone just kind of looks at him, which is one of, like, my biggest things, is sitting there while everybody else works. I have no thoughts. I have no words. I just get embarrassed. To number 10. This one is in chapter 136, which is Shizun Relax. This is at the very end of the chapter. They're still in the village at this time, and they end up giving them food. Obviously, they're staying in this village until all of the harvest is finished. Chuan-Ning gets spicy food. Now, I also relate to this a lot, because I like the taste of spicy food, but my nose runs like none other, and I just cry. So I get it. It's admirable of him, though, Chuan-Ning, at the end, where he just kept trying to eat it. Good on him for trying to, appease people and eat what they give you. Number 11. Chapter 138. This is another one that's very similar, so I won't go too much into this. They're still in the village at this point. This is the day after all of that, but Chuan-Ning didn't sleep well that night, so he works a little bit, and he ends up leaning against, I can't remember what it was, but he leans up against a pile of grain. Yep. like to take a break. And at this point, Moran has went to the village to go pick up some things. We don't really know what it is at this point. He was kind of big. But he lays there and then he falls asleep for the rest of the day. To piggyback off the no working thing. Twice now. Number 12! We're back in chapter 141. And if y'all know this chapter, this one is titled The Shizun Don't Strip, so this is a good chapter. I like this one. This one's fun. Basically, Chuaning is trying to live his life at this point. I don't even fault him for this one. He had went back into where they were staying and he was taking a bath after all the work was done this time. And then Moran just walks in while he's taking a bath, so he's naked. And then the girl who liked Moran had followed after him into the house. So Chuaning is just standing there naked, and Moran's staring at him. And then this random village girl is also staring at him. This poor man. There's a lot of times where he kind of warrants his own embarrassment because he's more than a little stubborn. I get his frustration. To curb his embarrassment, though, he makes it worse, because in the following chapter, this situation is still ongoing. It is named Shizun, This is Cruel and Unusual. At this point, Moran has scared off the village girl who was in the house. Chuaning, instead of doing something sensible, to hide his naked form or to get Moran out, turns around. He's like, oh, you're here, so you might as well help me, wash my back. Which is 1,000 times more awkward than it was before, or if he had just kicked Moran out too. It's horribly embarrassing. Chuaning embarrasses himself more when he tries to cover for his own mistakes than when he just gets mad. Moment 14. This is towards the end of the whole village thing. They end up having sort of party at the end, and there's a game where somebody is banging a drum, and when the drum stops, somebody is asked to answer a question. The questions were all given anonymously, kind of in this hat sort of thing, and they're super unfiltered and kind of inappropriate questions sometimes. But it stops on Moran, and his question is, who are 3 of the people you like most? He names the last person to be Chuan. Now, I consider this to be embarrassing because I don't take gifts or compliments very well. So I can just imagine how well that would go with me if I was standing in front of a whole crowd of people and somebody that I liked or respected suddenly looked at me and was like... I can't even describe how he does it. He basically confesses his love for him, but in the most friendly-ish way, seen as friends. Even the villagers in this moment, there's a paragraph where it talks about how the villagers look at them they kind of see some weird there. This doesn't seem entirely platonic, but it's a small village, so they don't have experience with any of that kind of stuff. So they just gonna pass it off as, I guess he just really likes his teacher. Chapter 150. This is quite a jump. We jumped 3 chapters in embarrassing moments, so good for me, I guess. I survived. This one is in the chapter titled Shizun and I Switched Rooms. This whole section, I'm gonna be real, gave me secondhand embarrassment, but I chose to talk about this moment for the sake of my own comfort. The entire conversation between Shuimeng and Moran at this point is so very awkward and embarrassing. Moran and Chuaning end up sleeping in rooms right next to each other. Not only that, but their beds are situated right next to each other against the wall. Basically, Chuaning can hear everything that's going on the other side of the wall in Moran's room. Zhui Meng walks in, kind of angrily, and asks Moran where his clothes are because his mom had packed their clothes together. So he just wanted to get his clothes so he can go to bed. They proceed to have a very awkward conversation where Zhui Meng is asking Moran about his latest sexual habits. Mostly because in the past Moran had been to a lot of brothels. He was known for getting around. So Zhui Meng kind of wanted an explanation about why he had changed, or if there was any change at all. And they proceed to have a very interesting conversation that sparks a lot of other interesting and private moments that I will not talk about on YouTube. Yeah, I'm just gonna go from there. I would have hated to have known that my subject of interest could totally hear that entire conversation on the opposite side of the wall. But that was a grand total of about 15 of the more outstanding second-hand embarrassing moments in this book. So if anything I can tell you from the 4th volume of the Husky and his White Cat Shizun is that the tone is a lot lighter. I've already said this is a lot lighter, it's a lot more humorous, it's a lot easier to read in that sense. The last few were a lot darker in the sense that they both had a lot of mixed feelings toward each other. Moran was still kind of murderous and hateful a lot of the time. Chuaning is still super prideful and can't get over literally anything, but at least you can peer more into his feelings a little bit better. It's nice to get this far. We're about almost halfway into the series at this point, book 4, because there's going to be about 11 volumes. To end this off, we're going to do this as usual. We're going to start with my favorite quote. This one's a little bit longer. This is found in the back end of the book, chapter 146. Shizun, is she really getting married? This one is actually from Moran's point of view. It is a nice change of pace and favorite quotes, but it reads, when he was little, he had fought other kids for food. In his previous life, he had fought the world for power, but in this life, he only wanted to fight for this bowl of soup. I like that. I just like that a lot. Mostly because if we're tracking the character growth of both the main characters in this series, I would argue that it's a lot more focused on Moran in his journey, which is interesting. I felt like my impression when I first started reading this was that it was going to be a little bit more focused on Chuaning. So kind of getting to this point, I guess I'm finally realizing that the main character really is Moran in his transformation and finding out what happened to him. So in that sense, he kind of parallels a lot with Wei Wuxian in the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation. If you've read that one, I'll be reviewing that one at some point too. I think that's a really good short quote to kind of sum up his character development, at least in the last 4 books. I feel like Moran really was kind of a good guy. He just kind of got screwed, which is honestly a lot of how these protagonists in these types of books go. But anyway, let's go with my ratings here. In terms of humor, I rated this an 8 out of 10. Nice to get back on the humor scale. Romance, I gave that a 6. Just because there were parts that were kind of romantic, like had the hints of romance, but most of the time it didn't feel that romantic. It just felt cringy, which brings me to my last rating, which actually is cringe, and I'm giving that a 10 out of 10. So if you were looking forward to that awkward pining phase, book 4 is where it's at. Thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying the Husky and his White Cat Shizun. If you're reading this or have read it, I've enjoyed it so far. I'm looking forward to book 5. If you'd like to talk about it more, I stream on Twitch weekly. I'll put that in the description below. If there are any books that you'd like me to take a look at, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll let you know. I don't really have a list of which ones I want to do in what order. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time?